Now let's hear again from Timothy, who says, "And then we were gone. In the time it took to sell the leather shop, we gave away what we'd been gathering for 18 months in Corinth. We kept the necessities for which we sewed new bags from old material. Paul dictated, I wrote, and we dispatched a letter to be read in several Galatian towns, Pessinus, Paleo, or Sistus. We tucked the shop money in belts and bound the belts around our bodies. We bid farewell to 100 friends, weeping, eating one last supper, commending each other to God. Then we walked to Cenchreae. We were a goodly company on the road, brothers and sisters of all three churches, Crispus and his family, Erastus and Gaius, each with their servants. Nearly 20 people altogether, laughing, sighing, singing hymns. That night, Phoebe housed everyone in her villa because of my love for Aquila. Paul preached, promising to return. In the morning, 6 of us boarded a boat for Ephesus in Asia, where we would divide into 2 parties of 3. Aquila and Prisca and Sosthenes planned to establish themselves in Ephesus, while we, Paul and Titus and I, sailed all the way to Syria. Paul wanted urgently to get to Jerusalem. It was Paul's anger that had driven us so swiftly from the city, and it was Titus, or rather the news young Titus brought, that had ignited the anger in Paul. On the day the apostle was arraigned before the proconsul Gallio, in fact, during the arraignment itself, 2 men found me high above the forum on the hill of the ancient temple, where I could watch the multitude and the dumb show on the bema, both. The first man I recognized as a regular guard at the Cenchrean gate. He said he happened to spot me here. Did I know where Paul was? The second man was a stranger to me, a vigorous youth, well-muscled, ruddy, healthy, and blooming. Yes, I knew where Paul was. Why would anyone have to ask? There, I said, stabbing the air, pointing. The one tied up, the one accused of a crime, that's Paul. The youth followed my line of sight and grew suddenly very red. His skin began to quiver like the flank of a war horse. The guard said he had to get back to his post. He said that this young man had traveled all the way from Syrian Antioch looking for Paul. The lad's name was Titus. Would I, the guard asked, take young Titus to Paul whenever it was convenient to do so? If, I said, they don't jail him or kill him first. The youth shot me a horrified look. Kill him? Kill Paul? The guard thanked me for my willingness and left. I felt suddenly very sorry for having flashed with anger. The young man was too tender to it, and he seemed truly concerned about Paul. Well, not kill him, I said. I tried to explain the circumstances as I knew them, the accusations, the synagogue, the head of the synagogue, Sosthenes, but we kept both staring down at the forum, growing increasingly nervous. The crowd had formed a tight ball at the bema, was crouched and growling like a beast approaching its prey. The proconsul was standing, a woman at his side. Her face was too distant to identify. Her posture looked familiar. He turned and departed by the back door. Everyone on the bema, everyone, the soldiers too, followed him. Then, with a hoarse, sustained roaring, the whole crowd converged on the stand in front of the bema, and Paul and Sosthenes both disappeared, as if the sea had drowned them. I began to run. So did young Titus. He would have outdistanced me, but he didn't know the way. We had to go west to get east, back toward the well of Glauca. By the time we came into the northwest corner of the forum, the multitude had changed directions, was scattering outward and blocking our progress. I saw Erastus mounted on a horse. There were 4 or 5 others cantering among the people and crying, "Break it up! Break it up!" I had no idea where Paul was. Only after the forum was normal again did I see a familiar face. Aquila, at the eastern end of the forum, helping someone ascend the broad steps past the Pyrenean fountain. I ran and caught up with him, and was astonished to discover Sosthenes in his arms. Sosthenes, stunned and covered with blood. Aquila told me it was Paul's blood. He said that Paul was by the bema. I turned and ran. And this time, young Titus, whom I had forgotten, flew by me as if he had wings. Then occurred a silly silence, a silly scene. Just as Titus arrived at the bema, so did Erastus astride his steed, calling, "Paul, Paul, what happened to you?" He began to dismount. Paul, sitting on the platform, face to face with Prisca, as if they were having a picnic. Paul, bloody, the front of his tunic crimson with wet blood. Paul turned to see Erastus, but noticed Titus instead. He screamed. Paul the apostle screamed and leaped to his feet and threw his arm around the young man. "Titus, Titus, Titus," he screamed. And the young man was grinning with strong white teeth. And suddenly, Paul sagged. He bumped down to sitting on the platform, his head drooping forward. Everyone rushed toward him, reached toward him, but he shook his head and looked up smiling. "Dizzy," he said, "just dizzy." Erastus announced, "Why, the very reason for which I've brought my horse, soft-saddled and ready to carry you home, Paul, to my house, Paul, where we can heal you." Erastus bent low, as if to pick up the apostle, but Paul's attention wasn't on Erastus. "Titus," he said, "Oh, Titus, come, give me a shoulder to lean on. Come, show me your love, sweet Titus of mine." So the two of them moved off through the forum, Prisca beside them. And I heard what sounded like 3 puffs of wind, and I looked and I saw great Erastus reduced by emotion. It had been a difficult